with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, KJ Boyle, research assistant at the Revolving Door Project, on Lena Khan and why you can't trust Republican leadership on Antitrust. Also on the program today, Donald Trump announces he's a target of the January 6th investigation and has 4 days to report to the grand jury. And as his pretrial hearing on the stolen documents case happens today, in Florida, the Georgia Supreme Court quashes Trump's bid to preempt the election interference indictment. So complicated. Alabama Republicans seem to be refusing the U.S. Supreme Court ruling to redraw maps to create a second majority black district. UPS starting to train scabs in an event of a strike. As Michigan Amazon workers stage the largest delivery station strike yet. Rashida Tlaib joins the progressive anti-apartheid boycott of Israeli presidential address as Joe Biden invites Netanyahu for talks. Republicans are welcoming RFK Jr. to testify on Thursday, despite the fact that his family has rejected his most recent COVID conspiracies and anti-Semitic tropes.
We get the podcast experience, but in a House committee.
There you go. Judge temporarily blocks Iowa's new abortion ban. Texas governor's border guards ordered to push small children and babies back into the Rio Grande. Feds are looking to strip Eric Adams of authority over Rikers. North Korea detains a U.S. citizen after he intentionally crosses the border. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is, as Emma Vigeland so eloquently states,
Newsday Tuesday.
There you go. It is Newsday Tuesday, but we do have KJ Boyle on to talk about the Lena Khan hearings. It's fascinating how this sort of like you can see in real time the Republican leadership gearing up to attack the first real, I would say, genuine antitrust regulator we've had in this country in at least decades.
Yeah.
And you can see the real-time failure of it over the course of the past like 6 weeks. It's a fascinating story and bodes well for more antitrust enforcement going forward. But before we get to that, this just broke before the show began. I don't think it's any big surprise, but Jack Smith, this is the special prosecutor who has been appointed both to investigate the stolen documents case, which today we will hear will be the first pretrial hearing, I guess, in Florida from that Trump-appointed judge. And he's also heading I guess, the Washington-based January 6th investigation, not to be confused with the sort of attempts to steal the election that took place in Georgia. And like I mentioned in the headlines, the Supreme Court of Georgia quashed Trump's bid to preempt the indictment that everybody anticipates happening within, maybe a month or so in Georgia. But Jack Smith sent notice to Donald Trump, and apparently he did it Sunday night, but Trump decided to release it today. Here is Donald Trump's announcement on Truth Social that he has gotten a target letter.
Wow.
He was very, very surprised to receive that letter.
Wow.
So shocking. But here it is. He gets the wow. On Sunday night, while I was with my family, having just arrived from the Turning Point event in Florida, we all know, of course, what he's talking about, where I won the straw poll against all other Republican candidates with 85.7, with all polls showing me leading in the Republican primary by very substantial numbers. Almost everyone predicting that I will be the Republican nominee.
Does this count as a run-on sentence? I mean, I just want to ask.
It's a run-on paragraph. And as I'm leading the Democrat Joe Biden by horrifying news for our country was given to me by my attorneys. Deranged Jack Smith, the prosecutor with Biden's DOJ, sent a letter. Again, it was Sunday night. He seems to be very pissed about the Sunday night letter.
Right. That's the whole
stating
day.
that I'm a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation and giving me a very short 4 days to report to the grand jury. So that deadline seems to be Thursday, right? I mean,
that'll give you some Sunday scaries.
Yep. Which almost means an arrest and an indictment. So now Joe Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who I turned down for United States Supreme Court, in retrospect, based on his corrupt and unethical actions of very wide. I don't know. I don't even need to read anymore of this. But this witch hunt is all about election interference and complete and total political weaponization of law enforcement. It's a sad and dark period for our nation. I don't know why. I really don't know why Ronald Reagan read that letter off to everybody, but there it is. So I don't know what happens, frankly, in the next 2 days. It was just breaking, but presumably he's got to. I don't know what that means in terms of report in front of the grand jury. If that means that he needs to testify, or he needs to acknowledge that he's been summoned by the grand jury, or acknowledge that he is a target in the investigation. This is more than likely. I mean, you would not have this unless they're prepared to indict him. Generally, when, not always, but often, when a grand jury is about to indict somebody, they will invite testimony from the accused. That will happen, and that sounds like what's going on here. So we will see more. But here's Marjorie Taylor Greene with her response. This was this morning in front of reporters on Capitol Hill.
Former President Trump says he received a letter from Jack Smith saying he's a target of a grand jury investigation of January 6th. Do you have a reaction to that?
Yeah, it's absolute bullshit. Yeah, that's my reaction. This is the only way that the Democrats have to beat President Trump, is to arrest him, smear him, charge him with ridiculous charges, all in a cover-up of Joe Biden's crimes, Hunter Biden's crimes. It's unbelievable. It's hard to even recognize that this is our country. The American people are going to be furious. And what Jack Smith is doing is the weaponized government. And he's weaponizing the Department of Justice against President Trump in a complete lie about President Trump and January 6th. And it's outrageous. I can't believe our country has to endure this. And I'll be standing with President Trump the entire way.
Have you spoken to him since this?
I have not spoken with him yet, but I'm sure I'll be talking with him very soon.
Given the fact that this is not the first time that he has been the target of one of these investigations, Do you find this one to be more serious?
Yes, I find it to be more serious because the charges they're looking at bringing against him, they arrested people on January 6th. They held them pre-trial. They never let them out on bail. And is the question that I want to ask Jack Smith, is this the plan? Are they going to arrest President Trump, charge him with phony, fake charges, and then hold him in prison while he is winning the Republican primary, while he's going to win the general election in 2024? Is this where our country is now? Because it's an embarrassment on the world stage. If this is the direction America is going in, we are worse than Russia. We are worse than China. We are worse than some of the most corrupt third world countries. And this needs to end.
She came out swinging.
There you go.
I'm the American Lula.
Yeah, I don't know what. So.
Libertad. Trump livre.
Trump livre. I just feel like there is, diminishing returns politically for these indictments at this point within the Republican primary. Because, this doesn't even register. They all think it's a part of one whole witch hunt. And it's like the more that they try, the more that, the more they cut off one Hydra's head, the more, three heads grow back or something like that.
That's a great point, because what is happening on the other sort of end of that ledger is that there are multiple like legit charges against him, and each new one doesn't necessarily help him, although he'll try and he'll fundraise off it, but it doesn't necessarily help his numbers anymore. I don't think it hurts him at all, but it doesn't help him. But you'd rather be facing one criminal charge as opposed to, let's say, 2 or 3 or maybe 4. That is, I think,
gotta catch them all.
And he's running out of lawyers. I just don't think he can actually literally get lawyers. But the other point about like the one-headed Hydra, Greg Sargent wrote a piece about this in the Washington Post yesterday or today. Part of the reason why they can't get any traction on their conspiracy theories is that there's so many of them.
Yeah.
And every Republican seems to have their like favorite one that needs to be serviced. So they can't coalesce around one narrative, right? Like, there's like, I'm trying to follow how many witnesses are missing in which part of the investigation about Hunter Biden. And are we talking about what Hunter Biden did, or is it what Joe Biden did, or the other members of the Biden crime family? Or is it really just about the suppression of the story about Biden? Is it China, or is it Burisma? Is it, and just literally scratch the surface. There's just simply too many cooks in the kitchen in terms of the conspiracies, because they all have their favorite ones.
What's canon?
Exactly. No, someone asked me actually the other day, like, can you explain QAnon to me? And I said, well, there's no canon.
Yeah.
It's just everybody's got their own sort of flavor. It's fascinating. But in a moment, we're going to talk to KJ Boyle. He's a research assistant at the Revolving Door Project about Lena Khan. This is another, a Jim Jordan who's in charge of like 25% of the conspiracy portfolio was leading this attempt at Lena Khan. It didn't work out so well, again, because there was sort of like attempts to create a scandal there with her that fell flat on its face. But before we get there, just a reminder that the Majority Report is not just a podcast. We have actually a retail aspect of our program. That's right. Of course, I'm talking about shop.majorityreportradio.com. That's where we sell merch. And we do it on the Shopify commerce platform. It has revolutionized millions of businesses worldwide. It doesn't matter whether you're a garage entrepreneur, as they say, sort of like, I guess, what we are. We technically started in a closet, but or if you are like IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, to run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. If you sell your merch, for instance, like we do at live shows when we have them, we haven't booked one in a while. We got to do that. But yes, you mentioned that to me actually. But the point is, you can integrate your in real life sales with your online sales, and you're all covered essentially. Doesn't matter what you're offering on Shopify's all-in-one commerce platform. You are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers into buyers. Shopify also integrates with all social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube. I don't know. Do people still use Pinterest?
Pinterest, yes.
Pinterest. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. They power Allbirds, which is that sneaker thing, and Rothy's, and millions of others of entrepreneurs, every size, across over 170 countries. And they have award-winning help. Shopify does will help support your success at every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. For me, obviously our merch is not a huge part of this, but for forever, I was reluctant to sell merch because I'm like, we're not going to be able to put stuff up in a timely manner. It's going to be too complicated. I'm going to have to hire a special merch person and this and that. Shopify made it super easy. And we pop up, shirts and different merch ideas as soon as we get them, integrated in, super easy. And if we actually grew as a merch enterprise or anything else, Shopify would make it super easy for us to do that too. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/majority. Take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/majority. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, KJ Boyle, research assistant at the Revolving Door Project. Right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program KJ Boyle. He is a research assistant at the Revolving Door Project. Also want to welcome his dog, who is a stalwart supporter of Antitrust and making that known right now. KJ, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for having my dog as well.
Well, anytime. We're pet friendly, pet friendly show. I hope the dog is not attacking anybody at the moment. All right, let's. Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission. We had interviewed her a couple of times years ago when she was a professor writing about things like antitrust. Give us a sense so far. Aside from like the stat that I'm most familiar with is that the Wall Street Journal has written about her like something like 63 times in op-eds over the past 2 years, which is an astonishing number. But give us a sense of like what she has done relative to Federal Trade Commission chairs in the past.
Yeah, so I think the Wall Street Journal has actually gotten up to about 70 op-eds.
Whoa, all right.
Yeah,
correct.
They're still on it. So yeah, Lena Khan's leadership of the FTC has kind of flipped that agency's reputation around. Since the 80s, it's kind of been known as a place for revolving door figures to go from corporate law to government regulation back to corporate law. But since her tenure, it's sort of shifted the antitrust landscape. So now corporations know that there's a person in charge that will not just wave through their mergers and will not just settle for settlements and divestitures and will actually challenge these mergers. Prior to Khan, something like 75% of the top FTC officials in the past 2 decades have revolved back and forth between the FTC and corporate law. So under Khan's leadership, that's changing and it's having tangible effects on the economy.
She has the interesting thing is, and they tried to make an issue of this in the hearings over the past week, and they were questioning her that she is 0 for 4 in some of her suits to stop mergers, which of course does not count the mergers that didn't happen because she was the idea that I think these companies realize like we're going to lose any scrutiny here. But the thing that strikes me is about the value of losing. I remember interviewing Jesse Essinger. I think his name was I think it was Jesse Essinger who wrote this book. I think he's writing for ProPublica now. But he wrote a book called the Chicken Shit Club, which was about the DOJ going after white collar criminals, but also it was broadly about these type of enforcement actions. And they were very afraid of losing in any type of situation. So they would err on the side of not bringing cases. And in some way, we're seeing the value of even bringing losing cases by the FTC in that it has what I think, those of us who are supportive of antitrust, a chilling effect on the attempts of these companies to become monopolies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Republicans will like to harp on that 0 for 4 stat, but as you said, it leaves out not only mergers that have not even been attempted, but also, there's been mergers that they file for an initial merger. Lockheed Martin, for example, tried to have a $4 billion acquisition of a rocket engine company, and then the FTC asked for additional information, and Lockheed Martin decided to drop that acquisition. So even some of these firms will initially attempt, and once Lena Khan and the FTC show some increased scrutiny, they drop it because they know that their cases will not win in court. So the 0 for 4, it doesn't look good on its face, but there's a lot more that the FTC does beyond those court cases. And it should be said that the FTC's budget and amount of employees that they've had for the past 40 years and for the past decade, the budget has been relatively stagnant, and they're going up against these multi-billion-dollar corporations and only have 1,100 employees and $430 million to take on these companies that have endless amounts of cash.
But nevertheless, I mean, I think as indicative of the Wall Street Journal, this record-breaking number of op-eds. I honestly think that it's probably a record of any sort of cabinet. I mean, even a cabinet position, never mind the FTC, a cabinet position getting named this many times. I mean, we're, 2.5 years into, I don't know when she got confirmed, but I don't think it wasn't right away. It wasn't even, actually, it was relatively recently. I mean, as it goes, I don't think she sat, for maybe even the first year. And to have 60, you think about how many business days there are, how many op-eds they pump out. It seems like
I just want to add too, if you just do a quick Google search, especially before this recent, hearing, it's not just the Wall Street Journal, the Times, the framing of it is negative. Bloomberg, obviously the framing of it is negative. I mean, it's really difficult. When I was, looking up the subject of this hearing, with the ethics violation she was accused of, which was essentially just her having an antitrust ideology, you have to go to different articles to find what is the ethics violation that's being accused of here. Not to jump too far ahead, but the framing of her from a media perspective across the board is just negative.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ridiculous the amount of times that the business press will write about her in that fashion. But it just goes to show, like you said, that she is doing a good job. You can judge federal officials by the enemies they make, and if you're pissing off the Wall Street Journal and business press broadly, and Republicans like Jim Jordan, you're doing a good job. You're making the right enemies.
What's also fascinating about the hearings this week is that in many ways, all of those reports, all of those op-eds were supposedly going to culminate in last week. I mean, this was, this is what it was building to. And you wrote a piece at the Revolving Door Project. I should also say you've been writing some at the American Prospect as well. But take us in the run up to this, because it starts in the first or second week of June with a piece that announces what in Bloomberg News.
Yeah, so I mean, really, the whole project goes back since Lena Khan's appointment. Republicans have this entire time been trying to undermine, her leadership, her reputation. But this specific case was back in February or last year. The FTC challenged Meta's acquisition of Within, which is a VR app development company. And in that case, Meta petitioned to have Lena Khan recuse herself, as Emma said, because of basically having a view of antitrust.
Literally, it was because she wrote a law review article.
Yes.
Espousing a perspective on antitrust that this is the way I think antitrust should be. If you have, and I imagine it had to do with vertical integration, if you have a company like Meta purchase a essentially a potential competitor and sort of integrate them into the company, the argument always has been, or I should say has recently been over the past maybe 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, that we should return to the perspective of antitrust that existed before Reagan adopted Robert Bork's view of antitrust. It went from, the Teddy Roosevelt trust busting of, what's good for the consumer is one part of it, but also what is good for competition. Because the more competition you have within the context of an industry, the wider the opportunity is spread across essentially the population and also, is it good just for society at large to have this type of monopolistic concentration? Under Bork, it was just shrunk down to, will it provide cheaper prices for the consumer? And a lot of times they would predict that it would, and it didn't, but that was less the issue, as more of just having a low bar on what the definition was of it not being an antitrust violation, she espoused this. So Meta, to try and thwart the FTC's enforcement action, basically lodges an ethics complaint and says, she's written about this before, so it's unfair because she's thought about these issues.
Yeah, so that was their argument, which obviously it's absurd on its face, but Lena Khan went through, the process, talked to an ethics official and got verbal advice. And the ethics official advised her that it is not a legal violation to have an opinion and still participate in the case. Obviously, she does not have any financial interest, which is what one usually thinks of when they think of like an ethics violation or a conflict of interest. And then, so that was back in February. Fast forward to a month ago, in the middle of June, Bloomberg publishes a memo from that ethics official, L'Oreal Pankey, which was a memo that Lena Khan did not see. It was not the memo that gave her the advice. It was a memo written at the behest of and addressed to former FTC Commissioner Christine Wilson, who spent the last 2 years of her time on the commission pursuing this project of undermining Lena Khan as the leader of the FTC. And in that letter, which the business press liked to seize on the fact that there could be a reasonable or appearance of concern of an ethics violation, but it also said that there is not a legal, there was no legal requirement for Khan to recuse herself. And the commission voted, a judge agreed that Khan did not have to recuse herself from this case. But, the business press ran with it anyway.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like the memo was completely manufactured. Like the former member of the FTC who was pissed about Lena Khan said to the ethics, can you write me a memo that says,
right.
That she violated ethics? No, I can't, because she didn't. Not legally, but I could say that theoretically one could recuse oneself if one felt that one had already, involved themselves in this. Writes the memo so that it can be leaked to the press in the run-up to Lena Khan's hearings, so that they have a story that metastasizes or so that the hearings were then scheduled just shortly after that thing came out. Ostensibly a coincidence, or was it supposedly about the potential ethics violation?
Yeah, I mean, Jim Jordan had been building up to this hearing anyway, but then, a week after the memo was published, it was announced that Khan would be testifying last week. And then about 2 weeks after the memo was published, Jim Jordan and Kathy Rogers sent a letter to Lena Khan highlighting the Twitter stuff that you guys covered yesterday, and also this memo claiming that she supposedly lied to Congress by saying that she never went against an ethics official's advice.
And then, and I want to get to that Twitter stuff, and just so you can outline it for us just a little bit more precisely. The Wall Street Journal publishes a piece that was based upon the investigation that you guys did. I imagine you were part of this, if not the person who did it, that found that the ethics official who recommended or said, like, you could recuse yourself from this Meta case, actually ended up owning stock.
Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurd. I got to give credit to my colleague Andrea. She's the one who pulled the disclosures of L'Oreal Pankey, who, as you said, owned anywhere from $15,000 and currently owns anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 worth of Meta stock, when she's making this recommendation that Lena Khan should recuse herself, despite having no financial interest in the matter. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that in itself could be an actual legal ethics violation on behalf of the.
Let's play this clip of Republican Ken Buck from Colorado, basically saying to Jim Jordan, take a long walk off a short pier. Buck seems to actually genuinely care about antitrust, and at the very least is not going to embarrass himself with this attempt by Jim Jordan to make it seem like Khan has done something wrong. But here it is. This is a great exchange.
Chair Khan, thank you for being here. Do you own stock in Apple, Amazon, Facebook, or Google?
No.
Do you own stock in any of the competitors to those companies?
I do not.
Do you know that the ethics official who requested that you recuse yourself from any activities involving Facebook owned stock in Facebook?
I learned about that, yes.
Do you know how much it costs to buy Congress? Well, big tech does. They spent $250 million against the bills that passed out of this committee last Congress. They spent money lobbying. They spent money on advertising in members' districts. They spent money with third-party think tanks. They spent money that no other effort in recent memory certainly has been spent. And it's not just the money that they spent, but on lobbying, for example, Meta spent, and I call it Facebook, $20,070,000, Amazon $19,320,000, Alphabet $11,770,000, Apple $6,500,000.
So there it is. I mean, that's the exchange there that really left not much ground to go after Lena Khan. And for the most part, the rest of the hearing was actually sort of relatively substantive, it seemed like, about these things. Jim Jordan did bring up, like, how dare the FTC require, reporters, what reporters Twitter gave the Twitter files to or exchanged there. But that was literally because Twitter had signed a consent order a couple of years ago saying that anytime we share any information with a third party, we will let you know. This is, it's privacy issue. That's a relatively standard thing that happens, right? It's just not with the conservative, like, hero of the day, Elon Musk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were mad that Lena Khan and the FTC had the audacity to enforce a consent decree that Twitter itself, signed on to in 2011. And since then, issues yearly reports to the FTC to show that they are still in compliance with those privacy practices. And yeah, like you said, they gave journalists access to people's private information, supposedly with the Twitter files. And not only that, when Musk came on, they did all these layoffs of the legal team, of engineers, compliance, like that degrades the infrastructure, like Twitter's infrastructural ability to comply with this consent decree, because it takes a lot of, people and expertise to ensure that they're in accordance with it.
And lastly, in terms of like Khan's integrity, I enjoyed this exchange again with Buck, because to the extent that we've had any type of legislation that has come out that would in any way curtail the size of these massive entities. I mean, big tech is a catchword. I would like to do this with a lot of industries, frankly, but was sort of went nowhere in the Senate, the democratically controlled Senate, if I remember correctly from the last term. And Ken Buck reminds us as to why.
In activities involving some of these companies, because you wrote a law review article. Do you have a child? I don't want you to answer that question just yet because that's personal. But do you have a child who is lobbying for Amazon or Facebook?
No, he's turning 6 months this week, so no.
Okay.
They'd probably still hire him.
Yeah. If they thought they could influence you, they would hire your child at 6 months old, because in fact, they've hired Senator Schumer's daughters to lobby for them. And the same bills that passed the House didn't get a chance, the same bills that passed the House Judiciary Committee passed the Senate Judiciary Committee and never saw the light of day on the Senate floor either. But that's just how the game goes. You're well aware of the need to update the antitrust laws concerning the new economy that we are facing. And I'd just like you, if you could, briefly to explain what is the need? Why is it so difficult to apply antitrust laws written at the turn of the last century to the new economy?
Thanks, Congressman. So there is antitrust doctrine on the books that has embedded within it certain economic assumptions about how certain markets work, about what types of incentives businesses face. That doctrine in some cases is 30 years, 40 years old, way before we had the advent of digital markets. These digital markets function differently, right? You have the self-reinforcing advantages of data, network externalities, companies face different incentives, they're engaged in different strategies, and sometimes there can just be a gap between how the doctrine is saying businesses are acting and what we see in reality. And so legislative updates can be needed to close that gap between what the theory says or what the doctrine says and what we're all living with in actual markets. And so that's in particular where legislative action can be absolutely critical.
I mean, I like both parts of that. I like the fact that we're reminded that Chuck Schumer stepped all over this legislation, and I like the fact that there's an opportunity to explain, like the doctrinal, the structure of antitrust is still there and still functional, but as it applies to a evolved type of business practices, this would become another tool that would make it easier, frankly, for the FTC to go to court.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to without having to sort of like extend the doctrine to and essentially fill in this gap through reasoning. It'd be much easier to have it just as statutory. And Chuck Schumer, I guess, I don't know, around the dinner table, maybe just was convinced that we don't need this type of thing. So let me ask you this lastly. Now that she seems to have like essentially run the gauntlet that Jim Jordan, and to be fair, there's a couple of Republicans on that committee who clearly do care about antitrust laws. This is, to the extent that there is a, and I guess maybe it's because the woke mind virus can't infect antitrust because of some type of enzymes, or I'm not exactly sure what it is, but this is actually a committee where you have several Republicans who genuinely do care about antitrust, and as long as they're not, as long as that topic stays not sexy, I think that support will remain. But now that Khan has been able to run this gauntlet of trying to attack her for some type of bias or whatever it is, do you anticipate more aggressiveness, the same? I mean, where does the FTC head now?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as Khan goes, her mission will not change. She'll keep doing what she's doing, but you can hope that some Republicans will come to the side of Buck, and Matt Gaetz had some comments as well in the hearing that were supportive of the FTC. But for the most part, the Republican constituency is big business and corporations. They will continue to fight against Lena Khan and for that constituency. And I do just want to mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. It's not just legislators that have siblings or children working for these corporations. In the FTC's case that they just lost against Microsoft, the judge of that case, her son works for Microsoft. And we actually sent a letter to that judge asking for her recusal, which obviously did not happen. So, you know, these issues are widespread, as we've seen many ethics concerns across the judicial system.
Pro tip: if you want to get a job at one of these companies, you may want to imply that your parent is a federal judge or somehow affiliated with lawmaking. KJ Boyle, thanks so much for the work you guys are doing over at the Revolving Door Project. I really appreciate it. Folks should check that out. We'll put a link to the Revolving Door Project. Doing really great work over there. Nobody else would have done this investigation into what this ethics person, them not recusing themselves from determining the ethics based upon their holdings in the company that they were ruling on. It's just, I think, just too perfect. But KJ Boyle, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, folks, before we end the fun half, the free half of the program, I just want to, this story from Texas is just so appalling.
Unreal.
You'll recall that Governor Abbott made a big show of a new border enforcement, essentially patrolling an initiative. And apparently, I mean, the word's not used in the Houston Chronicle, but it really does feel like this is there's a whistleblower. I mean, I don't know if the trooper himself blew the whistle.
Right.
Certainly sent an email to a superior. This is a state trooper. I'm just going to read parts of this again. This is from the Houston Chronicle because it's just so disturbing and
indicative of the effectiveness of how we've just dehumanized migrants, just so systemically, and the Republican Party in particular.
Officers working for Governor Greg Abbott's border security initiative have been ordered to push small children and nursing babies back into the Rio Grande River and have been told not to give water to asylum seekers, even in extreme heat. And we are going through some of the hottest days on record on the planet. Texas is sweltering. I think Phoenix has now set a record for 10 days above 110 degrees. So that whole region, just to be clear, is it is on fire.
And I just want to say this comes as Greg Abbott overturned laws in, I believe, Dallas and Austin. I could be getting the cities wrong, but two of the major cities in Texas that had put in place mandatory water breaks for construction workers after 4 hours. Those are primarily migrants in Texas. So this is like another effort by Greg Abbott in particular to make sure that migrants are thirsty and without water. Water to asylum seekers, even extreme heat. This is according to an email from a Department of Public Safety trooper who described the actions as inhumane. The July 3 account, so this is just from a week or two ago, reviewed by Hearst newspapers, discloses several previously unreported incidents the trooper witnessed in Eagle Pass, where the state of Texas has strung miles of razor wire and deployed a wall of buoys in the Rio Grande. According to the email, a pregnant woman having a miscarriage was found late last month caught in the wire, doubled over in pain. A 4-year-old girl passed out from heat exhaustion after she tried to go through it and was pushed back by the Texas National Guard soldiers. A teenager broke his leg trying to navigate the water around the wire and had to be carried by his father. The email, which the trooper sent to a superior, suggests that Texas set traps of razor wire wrapped barrels in parts of the river. Just contemplate what's going on here. They have taken razor wire.
They have wrapped around barrels. They have basically sunk these barrels halfway in the river with high water and low visibility. This is, of course, where people walk across. And says the wire has increased the risk of drownings by forcing migrants into deeper stretches of the river. Due to extreme heat, the order to not give people water needs to be immediately reversed as well, the trooper wrote, later adding, I believe we've stepped over a line into the inhumane. The piece goes on to say federal border patrols have issued internal warnings that the razor wire is preventing their agents from reaching at-risk migrants and increasing the risk of drownings in the Rio Grande. The trooper's email sheds new light on a series of previously reported drownings in the river during a one-week stretch earlier this month, including a mother and at least one of her two children who federal border patrols spotted struggling to cross the Rio Grande on July 1st. According to the email, a DPS boat found the mother and one of the children who went under the water for a minute. They were pulled from the river and given medical care before being transferred to EMS, but were later declared deceased at the hospital. The second child was never found. I mean, we talk about Russians putting mines in Ukraine. This is what this is. They don't explode. They just cause people to drown.
After being lacerated.
Just unbelievable. On June 30th, troopers found a group of people along the wire, including a 4-year-old girl who had tried to cross the wire and was pressed back by Texas Guard soldiers due to the orders given to them. That's the quote, the email says. The DPS trooper wrote that the temperature was well over 100 degrees and the girl passed out from exhaustion. In another instance, on June 25th, troopers came across a group of 120 people camped out along a fence set up by the river. The group included several small children and babies who were nursing, the trooper wrote. The entire group was exhausted, hungry, and tired, according to the trooper. The shift officer in command ordered the troopers to push the people back into the Rio Grande River to go back to Mexico. The trooper wrote that the troopers decided it was not the right thing to do, quote, with the very real potential of exhausted people drowning. They called command again and expressed their concerns, and then were given the order to tell them to go to Mexico and get in our vehicle and leave. After they left, other troopers worked with Border Patrol to provide care to the migrants, the email said. I mean, this is just horrific.
Yeah. Between
it's a war. It is a crime against humanity.
100%.
It's turning these National Guards and Doug Burgum, who's running for president now, signed an executive order saying, "Oh yeah, we'll give you some National Guards people if you want to go help, I guess, push mothers into razor wire in the Rio Grande." Like, think of what it's doing. Not only like the brutality, but like we're creating like extremist death squads. Because like for all the people who are going to blow the whistle on this stuff, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be the natural response of these guys.
I mean, we talked about this within the context of terrorism against the United States, right? Or what recruitment entails, essentially, where what we do in our brutality, it does not just evaporate. Right? Like, these stories become what the United States represents on the global stage. Yeah. And there's absolutely no chance that these stories of brutality don't resonate with the people these are human beings that have families and friends that are going to hear this kind of stuff. And it's not like they're just waltzing over the border. They're coming here and risking severe maiming and death for a better life. And this is what is met for them here.
Until we have a party that says actually we can fit more people here, we need to just process them faster. The Republicans are going to keep pushing more and more into like until we're just shooting AKs across the Rio Grande at people. Like we need an affirmative. Actually, yeah, we can have migrants come here, and yes, we're going to protect them. We're going to give people labor protection so bosses can't exploit them and that sort of thing. But like we can't. I don't know where is Biden on this, right? Like that's like people are wondering.
Title 40, sad about Title 42 ending.
And people are wondering why this isn't like a bigger thing. It's because Trump isn't president still.
Right. And the policies are not materially different from the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And we had a guest on about Guatemala last week, and I know a lot of the migrants coming over are from Haiti as well. This is also the result of U.S. empire and interference and our toppling of governments in order to put puppets in place in countries in Central and Latin America, and then in Haiti, of course, our history of exploitation there. Like it's incredible that we, and honestly, it's fitting though that we started in these countries with brutality, and then we meet them with brutality when they come here.
It's reprehensible. And we should be clear, when you talk about Guatemala, when you talk about Honduras, and essentially, us running the Contras and the right-wing death squads out of Honduras, essentially to go back into El Salvador and to Guatemala. One of the guys, I think, who was, I don't know, I can't remember if he was, I think he was a State Department official at the time, who wanted to provide aid to the dictator in Guatemala at the time. This is, I think, early 80s. Elliot Abrams was just appointed, and it was a right. Largely, and this happened while I was on vacation, largely a ceremonial position. And so it, supposedly the Biden administration was like, you can't do anything materially, but until we symbolically, like we understand what we did to these countries, that essentially rolled them down the hill to chaos and an inability to maintain a safe civil society. Until we acknowledge that, and that being one of the primary reasons why many people from that country attempt to emigrate to the United States, we're never going to get to that point where we can talk about migrants as human beings and as on both on a humane and a policy level. And to appoint Elliot Abrams, again, if it's just a largely symbolic position, that's
more the
just
reason.
As problematic.
Yeah.
Because it is the functional equivalent of, putting up those statues of Confederate soldiers. I mean, there's a reason why symbolism is important in any type of society. And symbolically, what we're saying is that what we didn't do anything. That we have no responsibility for this. If we don't, at least at the very least, symbolically hold ourselves to account.
It's wild. The Elliot Abrams thing is really dark because I remember like a few years ago when the Ilhan thing came out, and there was even people who I was following, like NatSec sort of liberal types who were completely caught off guard that people might object to Elliot Abrams.
Yep.
And I remember Sam Fraser, who's at the Quincy Institute, reminded me of one. This is from a guy named Megson. And I worked for Elliot Abrams as a civil servant. He is a fierce advocate for human rights and democracy. Yes, he made serious professional mistakes and was held accountable. I'm a liberal, but I'm also fair. We all have a lot of work to do in Venezuela. We share goals. Like, we are so oblivious. And like Bessner's talked about this with Davison on their show recently, but we are so, that whole blob, I guess they call it now, like that is entirely brainless and completely unmoored from reality at this point.
Yeah, and I think we just also have like we memory hole so much of this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so dangerous to appoint a guy like that, to a symbolic ceremonial position, because it encourages essentially amnesia about what role you've had in the world and why certain things are happening. But all right. Whew. Yep, we did not finish the show early today.
No.
As soon as I said that, pre-show, I said that to Emma, and she just looked at me and she was like,
not gonna happen.
Half laughed. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.com. When you do, you not only get the free show, you get it free of commercials. You help this show survive and thrive, and you get the fun half. What could be better? It's like a win-win-win. I've said that before.
Yes.
And today was actually, at least the majority of the show was a positive show. I mean, wasn't a doomer type of situation. What's going on with antitrust is a really important development. And, hopefully we will be in a position to maintain this type of antitrust regime for another 4 years, come 2024 into 2025, because there's nothing like 8 years of a new paradigm to stick.
Yep.
It takes time to unwind this stuff. It's easier to unwind than it is to build up, but it definitely takes time. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Check out our merch, shop.majorityreportradio.com, shop.majorityreportradio.com. Also, Seder Seeds. If you live in a growing zone, or, I guess theoretically, if you grow inside too, cedarseeds.com, cedarsseeds.com. Emma, ESVN.
Yes.
What the hey?
We spoke about the kind of surprising lack of long-term running back contracts at the tag deadline yesterday for the NFL, what that means for that workforce, essentially. The Titans signing DeAndre Hopkins, John Gruden suing the NFL after he was ousted for racial comments that were unearthed, and Alcaraz's amazing Wimbledon win, what it means for tennis. youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning will have a guest of last week, I believe it was, right? Basil Adra. David just conducted an interview with him a couple of hours ago. I was not a party of that, but tonight, and we'll also be talking about probably some RFK and Pramila Jayapal stuff. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning. David is back from London, so we've got the full crew back together tonight.
All right, folks, quick break. Fun half, 646-257-3920 is the number. We will see you there. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2.